Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining CVU on this amazing another webinar with the topic of From Equity to Action, Implementing UDL in Medical Education. Today we have Dr. Sarah Khalid, who will be our speaker. A little about Dr. Khalid. Dr. Sarah Khalid, MBBS, MPhil, Anatomy. MME is a dedicated educator, researcher, and a leader in the fields of anatomical science and medical education. Currently serving as the head of the anatomy department at Shalimar Medical and Dental College in Lahore, Pakistan. She has built a career defined by a commitment to the excellence and innovative teaching. Beyond her classroom responsibilities, Dr. Khalid plays an influential role in faculty development and institutional leadership. She chairs the organizing committee for CPD activities at SMDC and has organized several international multidisciplinary conferences. With this, I would like to invite Dr. Khalid to take over and share her knowledge and experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakina, for a very warm welcome and a very elaborate introduction. I'm humbled by that. And thank you, SIVU team, for having me over. Uh, let's start with today's topic. It's a relatively new concept in medical education, which is known as the universal design for learning. The universal design for learning is a framework which is defined as a tool to maximize teaching and learning experience for all students. The concept was created back in 1960, was the time when in United States a law was passed. That law said the federal law of architecture barrier. In that law, what was mostly why was it needed was it was decided, or it was a Supreme Court ruling, that the buildings which were created under the federal government or by the government should be accessible to all the residents despite of their race, gender, or any of their political influences or anything. That gave or that formed the basis for the universal design for learning. In 1980, the universal design for learning principle was adapted into education. And there were two founding architects, David H. Rose and N. Mayer, who adapted the same concept in the education particularly, saying that education should be all. It should not be restricted to any one person or person with any kind of discrimination should not be there. The purpose for adapting to universal design for learning was that it was a learning format which should support the delivery of a curriculum that is completely accessible, meaningful, and naturally challenging for all the students, whatever their background may be. With that, let's go forward. What's the benefit of having such a curriculum? It should promote inclusive and accessible learning. There should be an enhancement of the student engagement, and it should be more a personalized learning experience for all the students. It should encourage creative and adaptive teaching strategies among the faculty, and it should have a collaboration between among the students and the real world challenges. These were the benefits that were outlined at the time of its commencement or at the time of its conception. What actually is the universal design for learning, and how is it different from the traditional teaching? Universal design for learning is based on a concept of equity and equality. Equity is something different from what we call. It's not different from the teaching or the doctoring. If there was a student or if there was a doctor and multiple children went to the doctor's office with multiple complaints. They might have a scrapped knee or a stomach problem or a cough problem. And what if the doctor gave a single medicine for all those cures, for all those ailments? It would only cure one child, and the rest would go unattended or would suffer the same thing. The same concept goes in the teaching classroom. Every student has different needs. And if we take or if we teach all the students with the same principles or taking the concept that everyone is going to learn with the same things that are being delivered in a lecture or in a classroom, there would be a minority which might gain from it, but there would be a major chunk which might not get what you are trying to teach or impart the knowledge. The main purpose of Universal for Design Learning was to create experts or to introduce the concepts of expertise in a field, whatever that might be. It's based on the cognitive neuroscience. I'm not going to go into the very details of the cognitive neuroscience, but there were three main circuits in the brain that are responsible for teaching and learning. The first circuit is known as the affective brain network, and that is what is centered around the why of any learning concept. It is the emotions, the internal motivations, the rewards, the punishments, the values, the interest that govern this sector of the brain. Mainly, it is the limbic system and the amygdala and the nuclear accumbens that is concerned with the wired network. The second concept is the what network, or what is known as the recognition brain network. That what network is mainly concerned with the different senses or the type of things that enable us to learn. It's a visual processing center in the occipital lobe, or the auditory center in the temporal lobe, or the sensory integration in the parietal lobe, or kinesthetic learning that makes the recognition brain network or the what of learning. The third is the how of learning, and that is the strategic brain network. That is more directed towards the prefrontal cortex and the premotor cortex, and it is concerned with the problem solving, the self regulation, the time management, mainly the assessment part of the learning. Based on these three networks or these three neuroscience brain networks, the why, what, and how of learning was designed the Universal for Design Learning concepts or the principles of the Universal for Design Learning. The first principle was based on the affective brain network. Why do students learn? That is mainly what encourages them to go into a classroom and seek knowledge. That gave rise to the first principle of universal design learning, that provides multiple means of engagement. The more the student is engaged, the more motivated it is he or she is to learn. Giving them a stressful encounter, whatever that might be. If they are stressed in coming to the classroom, they won't learn. So, the first principle is based on the affective brain network or the why of learning, and it is directed towards multiple means of engagement. The second principle, which governs the universal design for learning, is the what of learning, and it is provide multiple means of representation. That means when you go into a classroom, the delivery of the material to the students should be focused or should be directed towards multiple domains or multiple things, not concentrated on a passive node. It should be more directed towards adapting a multimodal means of representation. The third principle of Universal for Design Learning is the strategic brain network, or something which is more directed towards the assessment part. And it governs, or it led to the third principle of Universal for Design for Learning, that means provide multiple means of action and representation. With these three principles, what was formed was known as the Universal Design for Learning. These three principles are what are the basis of Universal Design for Learning. How do we implement these strategies or these three principles in our classroom is the challenge for everything. Starting from the beginning, if we take the principles one by one, we might say that we have to start developing when we are building or when we are developing the curriculum. Starting from the formation of your learning objectives to the time when the assessment is planned, it should all be a new curriculum, or it should be adaptive or inclusive to cater to the needs of variations or multiple students that come to our classroom. The first principle is providing multiple means of engagement. The goal of the first principle is to create experts. And it is a well known fact that we cannot create experts unless until they are motivated. How to get them motivated, or how to get them engaged, or how to make them stay in that classroom is the major challenge for today's generation. The first thing we might do is that we might correspond with what do the students actually need. What are they hoping for when they enter a classroom? When we are designing a curriculum, it should be targeted, or it should be to the level of the students. Meaning, or what do I mean by that is that if you are targeting or making a curriculum for undergraduate level, a first year student, the complexity of the subject should be at that level that it is to engage that student. If it is too simple, the students are not going to come to your classroom. If it is too complex, again, they will not be willing to come into the classroom. Why? Because in both the circumstances, they would say it's either too easy for them or it is too difficult for them. Keeping the students or the level of the students in mind, and then developing the curriculum according to the needs of the student is the first three principle. And for that, what do we need is that we are going to go from easy, medium to hard. That means we have to scaffold, or we have to provide a guided learning to all the students. Starting with that, we have to optimize relevance and authenticity. In a classroom, what we can do is we can use the clinical triggers. For basic subjects like anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, always start with the clinical errors, telling that if the knowledge or deficit of the knowledge can lead to the errors which might be life threatening at times. Link foundational science explicitly to the word relevance. Don't add information that they think is irrelevant or they might not come across when they go to the clinical or the patient care. Those trivial things are not going to take them or not going to keep their interest for very long. The second thing what we might do is give them a choice in your classrooms. That might not be you are telling them to attend or not. You might start giving them choice in the topic they select for case presentations, perhaps for a presentation topic, for a discussion topic, for a topic that they find difficult, for a topic they think it's not being conveyed to them properly. The assignments given to them can be their choice of submission. They can or they should be allowed to submit the assignments according to the format that is most preferred to them. They can use a written assignment format, or they can use a poster, or they can use a video, or anything what they are more comfortable in. That might provoke their interest, that might actually engage them into learning and creating something and gaining knowledge out of it. The third choice offer might be that we give them an offer or in a research presentation or offer them a question of their choice, or they can do the research in the topic of their choice. The second, or perhaps the most important thing that can be adapted in our curriculum, we know we are all bound by a university level curriculums and we cannot change those heavy loaded basic knowledge or the examination part of it. But what we can add is we can add different electives or micro modules within the blocks. Those modules can be more or can be offered to the students if they want an additional learning resources. That can be clinical, basic, based on research, based on perhaps maybe sometimes even introducing hobbies or stress relievers or time management strategies as a micro modules is not a bad choice. The third thing what we can do is we have to give them a psychological security in the classroom. They should not be discouraged, demotivated, or ridiculed in any form. They should be encouraged in the form of milestones. We can tell them or we can give them a milestone format based on or to monitor their progress, and that can be in the real time structure. They can be offered scaffolding or they can be offered additional support in the form of peer tutors. Lastly, we can minimize the threat of the cognitive stress by releasing or by providing them with the complete list of learning objectives. I'm sure we all do that, but it's just that we have to remember to always do that. Not sometimes, not maybe, but it should be always. And one thing is which is stressed is that there should not be any surprises. No surprise assessments. If we want to take an assessment in any format, that should be prior notified to the students. It should not be something of a surprise when they come into a class. The second principle is the multiple means of representation. I think I'm not going too fast. If I am, you are free to tell me in the chat box if you think I'm going too fast for that. Multiple means of representation is something which we are, I'm sorry, which we are all aware of. I see Dr. Gaurav Ajit in the participant list. He's my teacher and a great mentor. Multiple means of representation means that we have to acknowledge that the type of students we have are passive learners or what we call the surface learners. They are passive listeners and they have a very weak retention power. Then we have students which are rote learners or memory based. They memorize everything. These are the type of students which struggle with new questions. We have conceptual learners or deep learners which try to understand everything. They have strong foundations and they have the long-term learning things. Then we have those type of learners which are known as the strategic learners or the smart learners. They are not focused about any deep learning. They are not focused about anything else. They just want to pass their exam. Then we have the learners which are kinesthetic learners or learners which learn with the means of their hands. And there are the last variety of learners which are self directed or internally motivated learners. These are the type of learners, or these are the type of students which we see every day in our classroom of 150 or 200 or 300 students with a mixture of them. Some of them are visual learners, some of them are auditory learners, some of them are kinesthetic learners. They all have different needs. Catering to the needs of all the students is what is required by a teacher. This principle or the what of the learning is where the main role of the faculty comes in. The more innovative, the more inclusive, the more out of the box you are, it's the more you are going to attract the students into your classroom. You can think of gamifications, you can think of game based learning, you can think of storytelling, you can have a visual board, you can have a game board. Whatever you think is doable is the kind of thing that is going to attract your students. What we can do in the classroom to for the benefit of the student is we can start with the multimodal content delivery. What does it mean? It means that never rely on only one source of delivery. Never ever rely on only using the multimedia slides. If you're using the multimedia slides, try using videos, try using the chalk and the board with it. Some students are more prone to follow you through that. Try using different methods for the delivery of the same concept. Try giving them concept maps, try giving them flowcharts, or you can have all of them together in a classroom and the students are going to find something that is beneficial to them. Clarify the language and terminology. The simpler you are, the more likely the student is going to follow you. Don't overcomplicate or over complex things. Stay grounded. Start taking the students from the macro to the micro to the clinical side. That means starting from A to B to C. Take them step by step. Don't assume anything. It should be something which should be reinforced, or the level of the complexity should be increased one by one, not simultaneously, not assuming that they know everything. What we can do is we can simplify things for our students, highlight or create patterns or relationship between the topics. Everything is should be related to one another. Don't introduce mini lectures within mini lectures within mini lectures. It should be one concept that should be that should be taken from ground zero to the highest peak. Scaffold complex information and ensure accessibility to all the students. Make sure that everyone has something they can take home with. Use high contrast visuals or diagrams or 3D images. Make the AI your best tool. There is a part of AI that is going to interest even the best of us. We can find something that is going to help us to take a better class or take or deliver a lecture that is going to be beneficial for all the students. This is the part where the main faculty or main faculty role has to come in. We need to stress on, if I have to say one thing, it should be multimodal. That means we have to have multiple ways of representation. We started with the development of the curriculum, started from with the learning objectives, making the curriculum engaging the students, then providing them multiple modes of representation. And the third and the most important part of any curriculum or any design or any degree is the assessment part. Or we should give them multiple means of action and expression. What do we mean by that? We all know that there are multiple means of assessments. We can have essay questions, we can have MCQs, we can have objectively structured clinical examinations, we can have objectively structured practical examinations, we can have vivas, we can have simulations, we can have whatnot, we can have a programmatic and we can have situational based test. Whatever you say, there are 1,001 modes of assessment. But the problem is that what we forget is we think all the students are equal, where we are all wrong. The students are not all equal. A student like me perhaps has a difficulty in giving a Viva examination. I am more comfortable in writing. If you give me a long essay question, I can score maximally out of it. But I have a difficulty in comprehension, or I might not be able to give a Viva. What we need to do is we need to restructure our examination into flexible assessment modalities. That means we have to think about assessing the competence. That can be either through your OSCE stations, through your oral Viva examination, through a written examination, through a simulation platform, or a digital portfolio, or whatever. But we have to concentrate on one point, that we are assessing the competence. We are not assessing their communication skills. If that is not your competence, we are not assessing their writing skills. We are assessing their knowledge. So you can give them a variability in the assessment profiles. We can scaffold the executive functions. That means provide structured clinical reasoning templates, offer checklists to the students prior to the exams, give them time management techniques, provide them with planners, provide them with ways to overcome their stresses. The third thing is we need to support the motor and the procedural skills of the students. We can give them simulation labs with graduated difficulty, starting from the novice to the experts. We can give them video back feedbacks, or we can give them one-to-one feedbacks. We can have a peer assisted learning in our institutions. The peers, sometimes the students learn better from the peers than from their faculty. We can encourage metacognition. What we can provide feedback logs. We can have multiple or all of these things, which I'm sure we all must be doing at some level. And when we see them under the umbrella of the universal design for learning, what it stresses is that it should minimize the threats and the distractions. It should be able to offer alternatives for auditory or visual information. There should be multiple medias of illustration. It should optimize access to or assistive technologies. And we can have multiple media or multiple modes of communication. If I have to summarize what or one take home message from me to all the worthy participants would be that universal design for learning is not something we are not doing. If you take a look at it, you might come across the things, and there can be a moment that, yes, we are doing this in our classroom. Yes, we are doing this in our assessment. Or yes, we are taking that into consideration in our curriculum. But what it stresses is that we have to take the three principles, that means engagement, representation, action and expression, and implement them collectively, not individually. We should have optimized relevance. We should foster a sense of belonging. We should include or adaptive curriculum. There should be multimodal representations. Then we should have a multiple means of assessment for all the students. I think we all do these things. That means we have meaning class-based, case-based learnings, we have clinical scenarios, we have choice of learning activities, but we have them one by one. Think of introducing them simultaneously in a classroom. That is going to be more engaging for the majority of the students. I think that would be from my side. And back to you, Sakina. I'm open for questions if anyone has any question.
Thank you, Dr. Khalid. This was really eye-opening and awesome. Anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you can put it in the chat. Dr. Shabi is talking about something. Dr. Shabi, do you want to?
Yes, I'd be
share your
happy to.
thoughts? Yes.
Yeah. So, Sarah, it was an excellent talk. And I think scholars like Gaur, Wajid, and Hassan Zaidi will dilate more upon it. Hassan is there as well. When you talk about equity and equality, certainly I thought it's a very valid point that you mentioned in applied, in teaching basically. But I want to just talk briefly about it in healthcare sciences, because that is where the problem comes up. I'll give you an example. NHS is one wonderful example of service at the free service at the first point of contact, and it continues throughout whatever. But what is happening is, because it is based on equality and not equity, the entire process is diluted. So they just give generally vaccination, for example, immunization or drug therapy or whatever. So eventually the resources run out, and therefore some get the things they want, the others do not. Equity is more applicable, and this is my philosophy, and I've been talking about it, teaching about it, that based upon utilitarianism, what we should do is we should pick and choose. A person, for example, who needs blankets to cover or shelter or whatever, as against somebody who needs, for example, food or drugs or medicines, that way you can stretch out your resources. This is one of the ethical debates that comes up all the time. Services within limited resources. Same applies to teaching. I'll give you an example of utilitarianism during the COVID era. Equity versus equality. In Italy, soon after COVID, they said we will do equity and not equality. Not everybody will get the ventilators. Not everybody will get the vaccination. We'll have to pick and choose. Whoever deserves it most will get the ventilator first, and the others will follow. So my observation here is it's a wonderful thing that you started. We should discuss more about it, and I'd like to hear the opinion of other scholars like Gohar Wajid and S and others, Hassan and Zafar. Thank you. Over to Sakina.
Yes, Dr. Gohar, do you want to say anything? Can you chime in, please? Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, may I? This is Hassan.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think a wonderful talk by Dr. Sarah, and very valid point raised by Dr. Prof. Shabi that, uh, if I mention from my own instructional design point of view, we do the needs analysis first. So based on that, and then we profile our learners. So you're absolutely right, Prof. Shabi, that we will run out of resources if we try to cover everything for everybody. So what we do in our instructional design point of view, we profile learners, and then we ask learners what they want to learn, like where they want to reach. And based on that, then we deliver what would be more appropriate for them, what kind of material, what kind of resources, what kind of assessment. So that's how, based on profile and using, I think Dr. Sarah also highlighted, like AI can play a very important role. That's what I would say from my side. Hope it makes sense.
Hello, Sakina.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Hassan bhai.
Wa alaikum salam. Excellent talk. In depth, we as teachers realize that, and Shabi Bhai has actually mentioned a point which he said, the concept which they practiced in Italy, we did it in COVID. Ventilator was not offered to everybody. I was very impressed by Sarah saying you can't have teaching one, a size fits all. You have students of varying nature, varying receptivity, varying backgrounds, and you have to really cater and find a common point to teach them. I'm very happy. I yesterday attended a big conference, Mubashir is with us, on the surgical summit in central London, where about 1,000 sort of surgeons came. And we were all, it was on robotic, how robotic and AI is coming into, the domain. So I'm very happy that you are discussing those points, that you are very good in answering essay questions and not answering vivas. But that is the duty of the tutor, to realize which students are good, how much they are receiving, how much they are able to replicate once they are asked. Excellent presentation. Your diagrams, your analysis was superb. Very impressed. May Allah bless you and you become a good tutor. You know that you didn't press upon, we must ask questions. The way I start teaching is I always give them a scenario and then we start. Every week I teach, I first ask the students, what have you seen? Because I'm a clinical tutor. I've seen how many patients did you see in the ward? And they'll say, we saw this. And then, were you in theater? Were you able to assist? And that gives an impetus to the students, who then start talking. And believe me, as Hazrat Ali has said, asking questions is half knowledge. So ask questions so that you can really, your half knowledge can be completed. And you must really talk. Takallumu ta'arafu, you speak so that you can be identified. You can be assessed. Very good presentation. I was very, very impressed. I'm glad that I joined a little about 2 minutes or 5 minutes late, but all the slides, oh God, they are better than what I saw yesterday in central London. We had a very big conference on robotic surgery, and I personally had robotic surgery myself, so I wanted to go and see what did they do to me. It was amazing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful. Sir, I wanted to stress one point. The concept of universal design for learning, especially in the part of assessment, is something which is being overlooked. I'll give you an example. For example, I teach anatomy. I think
Mhm.
from your days, you remember when you used to go for an anatomy exam, there were
Mhm.
always spotting. And in
Mhm.
spotting, we have colored pins,
Mhm.
right? Yellow, blue, red, green, purple pins. What happened? We had a student, and that student was colorblind, and he himself did
Oh.
not know that. And when he used to go for the spotting examination, he always used to fail that exam. And we were really worried. A student who's doing good in a written component, how come he is not performing well in the OSPI
Yes.
or that component? And that led to something to find out okay, what's happening. And he himself did not know okay, he cannot distinguish colors. This is what is actually happening in our education system. We are making one assessment plan and we think all the students should follow that, not realizing that some students might have a disability, might have some condition that is not allowing them to do that. They might be wonderful students, they might be very empathetic doctors, and we are losing them.
Agreed. In total agreed. Very good points you're making. Absolutely. Now,
Thank you,
you
sir.
talked about anatomy. In the days when I learned
Yes, sir.
anatomy, I was taught by somebody who's Professor Emeritus, Professor Mehndi Hassan, who actually you may know his name. His name is in the big Gray's Anatomy for discovering an ossific center, and he worked on in Germany on neurosciences, neuroanatomy. And in those days, he was teaching anatomy because we thought learning 33 branches of maxillary artery when it crosses the masseter, 9 before, 9 behind, and 9 afterwards, they were useless. But if you have an applied question to it, an applied science to it, then you will learn it. I'm sure things are now very different. When I ask in a class, I have to ask, please surface mark the cecum, and people ask which side of cecum, Sarah, you won't believe. No. So I teach Georgia the students, and I ask them whether you are being taught on cadavers or you're being taught on polystyrene models. Because without anatomy, you cannot become a surgeon and you cannot teach surgery. Very impressed with all your thoughts. God bless you. It's a very good
Thank you.
lecture. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just butt into what I just said? In anatomy, you were taught by Professor Mehdi Hassan. I was taught by Hazrat Adam alayhi salam himself, which is Professor Last.
Yes, of course. You see,
So RJ Last, when he was, we were in the last batch at the Royal College of Surgeons in London. Now, he was a smallish man, ready to return, and he used to have the snuff in his thing, in snuff box, and he used to inhale it. But that's beside the point. His way of teaching was totally different to what we were taught.
absolutely.
Now, this gentleman, R.J. Laws, would teach entire anatomy through cranial nerves. He would just follow the cranial nerves. And I still remember, and it helped me so much in my exams in head and neck, for example. I could still remember the facial nerve he passed through. So every teacher also is different. Like talk about the question of all students not being on the same level of understanding, etc. Even the teachers are different. So this universal principle of learning and designing a certain curriculum and methodology and assessment according to the universal needs looks very ambiguous. I think that is why the micro-learning process that has come up. I go to Imperial College sometimes to attend. They're doing constantly micro-learning, small bits, and children are working on Ankis or whatever it's called on their small mobiles or tablet. The old-fashioned lectures are gone completely. In London, you don't see any lectures except for occasional surgical conference like you attend, for example, or I do. So
Can I add something, Dr.
Yes.
Shabi, on this note?
Yes.
You are absolutely right. The first thing I ask my students, please go and read first 60 pages of R.J. Last, whether in the small handbook or the large handbook. Because if you understand that first 60 pages where, embryology, then surgery becomes easy. Because in surgery, our diagnosis is based on history, 80% history, 10% investigations, 10% of, your clinical examination. If the pain starts around the umbilicus, Professor Norman Browse, who's just retired from St. Thomas, says that no other condition gives rise to this shift of pain. It's a midgut pain, it's the appendicitis. And I make them to follow the rule of, foregut, midgut, and hindgut and talk in that sense. And I have been able to actually educate not only the students, but all my colleagues, except one who's now retired. They said, you've got a different, but I said, I was taught by Mehdi Hassan and RJ Last. Examine where the pain is coming from. Is it a midgut pain? Is it a foregut pain? And is it a hindgut pain? I taught Shabi Bhai's, grandsons, and they were amazing. Nobody teaches like that, but we've learned from, not from our mother's womb, but from our very good teachers. I'm sure Dr. Gohar Wajid will, testify that this knowledge of teaching is disappearing fast, but we need to keep that. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Just if I can chime in for 1 minute, this is amazing, but this is at the medical level, right? What about the elementary, the middle school, the high school? If we are not catering to the kids who have difficulties in taking exams or attention deficit or anything else, we are losing them at that level. My son has ADHD, and he was diagnosed when he was in 2nd grade. But here they have so many good programs that they
Absolutely.
literally hold his hand through high school. He used to go in a separate room to take tests they used to give him more time to take tests because he couldn't concentrate. So there are so many things. So here, kids cannot say, well, we weren't catered to our needs, and that's why we can't excel. But
no,
back
absolutely.
I have seen you know what, once I had experienced my son, I go back and look at the kids in my neighborhood, kids in my family who had difficulty studying, who had difficulty attention. They left school when they were like in fifth grade or sixth grade, but they were brilliant students, brilliant kids, some of them had very good memory, but they couldn't excel in school because they didn't get those facilities.
They didn't get that support.
So we need to take this down to that level.
Yes.
And make sure we don't leave behind any kid who may have different ways of learning. So we need to provide different ways of learning for those kids so they can excel.
Well, we
Sakina,
have
exactly
a special
my
special
Yeah.
needs program, Sakina, here in UK.
Yeah,
We
but
identify,
what about India, Pakistan, and Iraq?
It's not there at all. I
Yeah.
can tell you, it's not there at all.
No, I can talk about Pakistan because you know what? I'm sorry for interruption, Sakina. I'll take only 30 seconds. Dyslexia came into prominence only much later.
Mhm.
We used to get a lot of patients and they were all advised adenoidectomy. So I did a research on it because adenoidectomy should not be such a common operation. It's a different story. Anyway, so I came to England and that was way back in 1985, which is six. I attended a course at the Royal College of Surgeons where a certain lady was talking about this condition that nobody knew of. And she was quoting Leonardo da Vinci, Churchill, all these people had this condition where the brain functioned the opposite way. And Sarah will tell us more about it. The Broca's, what's it called? The speech area was not that dominant.
Broca's area.
The Broca's area.
Broca's area, area 44.
Right. So they had this problem.
Mhm.
So I went back to Pakistan, did a study of a very famous school, there were about 800 students, Karachi Grammar School. And I picked up 3 or 4 those students. And I told these people, they were well-off people. So I told them, one of them was a very famous doctor, gynecologist. I said, take them to England, go to the center, get it checked. Anyway, then dyslexia was, and now in Pakistan, there are centers for dyslexia. I'm sure there are centers for ADHD as well. But times have changed. It's only in the last couple of decades, maybe things have changed. And Sarah, this is where I think we have to focus in Pakistan, Iraq, or India, that, we have to look at, like Sakina was saying, that every child should be treated as an individual, as a person, to find out if there's any fault. Why is he failing? Why is he not able to see? Why? I mean, all these factors. So that's just a comment.
Sir, absolutely agree. So even in our medical, we have one system of admission in the medical college that is based on your academic performance. We do not see all the students that are academically high profile are suitable for medical profession or not.
That's a very valid point.
When I had gone for open house for my son's high school, I met a couple who adopted several autistic kids. And the curriculum at the high school for those autistic kids was amazing. They were not only taught the education, but also life skills. They would take them on a bus for grocery shopping. They would teach them how to cook, make sandwiches. They were making them self-sufficient, that they can take care of themselves if they ever need to. And that really made a huge difference in me, because I did not know about this until I met this couple and I went through, they showed me all the curriculum that their kids have in the high school my son was going. They had a separate class, all separate teachers, but they were giving them life skills. How much of that do we do back home? We don't. I have seen autistic kids who just sit at home and be dependent on people. And when the parents, I have seen parents who pray that their kids would pass away before they do, because then there's nobody to take care of them. So this is what we need to focus. We need to learn from other people and implement those changes in our curriculums, in our education system, and bring our kids up. So it was really very, very amazing topic, Dr. Khalid. I really appreciate you taking time right at iftar time. I'm sure you haven't had your iftar yet, But thank you for giving us your time, giving us your experience, and sharing your knowledge. And we really appreciate it. Does anybody have any other questions before we close and let her go have iftar? No? Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And keep in touch, and we will see you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakina. Thank you, Dr. Shabi, for having me. It was a
Thank you.
wonderful